on December 4th, the annual DealBook Summit took place. And during this, we got some really interesting in-depth interviews with a few of the top people driving the future of AI. So DealBook is the name of a financial news service founded in 2001 by New York Times columnist Andrew Ross Sorkin. Since then, it's been kind of a core piece of the New York Times' reporting in business. And since 2012, the Times has also kind of paired with this the DealBook Summit. So in this event, they interviewed top newsmakers in business. In the past, they've interviewed people like Elon Musk, NVIDIA's Jensen Huang, Vice President Kamala Harris, and Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu. So they get some pretty significant figures at this event. And at this year's event, Sorkin, who kind of MCs the whole thing, interviewed some of the top AI leaders in the world. So there were some other guests that were not related to AI, but the ones we're interested in were the three he talked to who gave us kind of an inside look at where their companies and the industry at large are going as we close out 2024. So in particular, he interviewed OpenAI CEO Sam Altman, Google CEO Sundar Pichai, and Amazon founder Jeff Bezos. Now, Paul, I know you are following these conversations closely. I just want to hit on a few very quick points that jumped out to me and then kind of turn it over to you to kind of reveal to us like what you took away from these talks. So a couple of things with Altman that he said that I thought were kind of notable was he was like, my guess is we will hit AGI sooner than most people think in the world think, and it will matter much less. Interestingly, things will kind of pass through that milestone and kind of go on with our lives in a more abundant future. However, he also did say, I expect the economic disruption to take longer than people think, but be more intense than people think. So he's kind of saying that we might see a lot of changes in the economy. I also thought it was noteworthy, given all the drama around this, that they asked him about his beef with Elon Musk. Will Elon kind of come at him using his newfound influence with the Trump administration? And he said he believes pretty strongly that Elon will do the right thing. It would be profoundly un-American to use political power to the degree Elon has it to hurt your competitors and advantage your own businesses. I don't think people would tolerate that. I don't think Elon would do it. On Sundar Pichai's side, I thought it was kind of interesting. They kind of called him out with some quotes around Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella saying, hey, Google should have been winning this whole generative AI thing. They got caught flat-footed. He kind of just said, I'd love to do a side-by-side comparison of our models with Microsoft any day. And they also said the area we applied AI the most aggressively, if anything in the company, was search. This is essentially what motivated them to be applying transformers way back when. So he basically is saying, look, I'm not worried about our core business, though search will change profoundly. And I think we're going to actually just be able to make it all better and able to handle more complex questions than ever before using AI. Now, finally, with Bezos, he covered a lot more than just AI in his interview, but what's interesting is he said he's basically, kind of moonlighting back at Amazon, helping specifically with AI. 95% of what he's helping with is AI. And he's talking about the fact they're working on literally 1,000 applications internally for AI. We'll talk more in the next topic about their own large language models. They've released the Nova family of models. And basically he said, look, in some ways our models are already smarter than humans because they're multidisciplinary and humans often are not very good at all the things they do in a day. So Paul, I'll turn that over to you, but just some kind of interesting highlights that jumped out at me in this.
Yeah, they're all worth listening to. I think Bezos was the longest, maybe at
It
40
was,
some
yeah.
minutes, or his might have gone 50 minutes. I don't know. But Sam's was like 30 minutes. Sundar was around 40 something. So they're all very digestible, especially 1.5 times speed on YouTube. So I would suggest listening to all of them. I think there's a lot of perspective and context. And honestly, like even reading the quotes, which I'd read some of the quotes before I listened to them, they take on very different meaning when you hear how they're said. Like even
Really?
the Sundar one, there was an edge in his voice
Yeah.
because that's how the interview started. Was he said straight up like, hey, Satya's been kind of like, taking it to you guys about this. And his comment was like, yeah, where are their models? Like, I don't need him talking to me because they don't even have their own. They're using OpenAI's models. It was a tense response. Like he wasn't super ecstatic about it.
Yeah.
And there was quite a bit of emotion because I will say, like, Andrew does an amazing job of just coming straight at and asking hard questions, and then he pushes on the hard questions. He doesn't, like, stop. And so he asked point blank, like, at one point with Sam, like, about their thoughts on copyright law and fair use. And Sam's like, "Well, you guys are kind of suing us." And and
Yeah, yeah.
Sam's like, "Well, I think it's fair use." And Andrew's like, "It's not." And he's like, "I guess, we'll see each other in court," kind of thing. I was like, "Whoa!" Like that was a weird place for that interview to go. So I would say on Sam's, it's worth listening, especially if you don't like deeply understand or know the OpenAI origin story, his history with Elon Musk, things like we've talked about on the podcast a lot. It was a nice kind of synopsis, and he wove a lot of that into their conversation. You kind of hit on this idea of AGI is like they're very much now talking about it as almost like this continuous thing and like a mile marker, not like the milestone goal anymore.
Yeah.
And and I think they might have used this, if not Sundar did this analogy over to like Waymo driving cars, where all of a sudden the things just drive without people in them. I mean, they're teller operated sometimes, but whatever. So this idea though that we are going to achieve narrow AGI in a way in different fields, and like life's gonna just kind of move on.
Mhm.
And so when we talked about this on earlier episodes where we shared Google's levels of AGI, where they look at performance and generality. And so they started talking about this idea that like at like level 3, I think it was in their world, where it's better than like 75% of the humans that would do a thing. Well, if you
Right.
think about it and you start looking at writing and SEO and consulting and eventually accounting and lawyers and doctors, like we're likely very close to AI that is superhuman in different domains,
Mm.
meaning it's like virtuoso in Google's world. The virtuoso is like better than 99% of humans at a thing. It might be a while before a model like ChatGPT or Gemini is just better than all humans at everything. But we're going to start picking off domains where the AI is better than the human at the thing, better than the best humans at a thing, a discipline. That does not mean the AI takes all the jobs. It just means there's like a thing that's probably better at part of your job than you are.
Right.
And and so that's where like Sam got into like this idea of super intelligence where, really it outperforms humans 100% of the time at all cognitive tasks. And he basically is like, yeah, life's going to kind of just keep going on. He's sort of in this mentality that we'll figure it out and we'll build other models and, whatever. He did get into the scaling wall, which we've talked a lot about recently. Is there, a wall? He was very straightforward. Like, no, there's just no wall. And the main reason, and Sundar kind of backed this up, and even Bezos did to a degree, they think of building these models as three main components: the computing power, which is the NVIDIA chips, like how many chips can we stack into a data center and wire together and get them to do this thing; the data that goes into them, including now synthetic data; and then the algorithms, meaning the ways we find to do this smarter, like that these things become more efficient. So we don't, if we have 100,000 NVIDIA chips, maybe next year we can achieve the same output with 50,000 because we built better algorithms of like how to do the learning and things like that. Um, he did confirm some usage data, 300 million active users. That was weekly, wasn't it? Was it weekly or
Weekly.
month?
Yeah, it's
Weekly.
weekly active users.
That was before Sora. So
Yeah.
300 million weekly active users, 1 billion user messages sent on ChatGPT every day, and 1.3 million developers, which is just, crazy numbers.
Yeah.
They got into this whole like creators who content has been used to train the models again. He pushed him hard on that, and Sam doesn't really have. I don't know. They just keep standing on this. It was fair use, and it's not. But whatever, the courts will decide that. And then he asked all three of them about like meaning for humans, like as AI kept like evolving, what does this really mean? And Sam, who has a kid on the way, I don't know when they're going to have their child, but they have a child coming, and so he said like, you have a child coming, like how do you think about this, like the
Mm.
future for that child? And he basically said the economy will grow, jobs will change, but evolution's slow and humans adapt. Was basically Sam's message for everything. Um, Sundar, I thought like he asked him about the wall, and he said there's more breakthroughs needed, but they're coming. The algorithms, especially in planning and reasoning, are going to happen. Um, he pushed him on the losing their lead and the search thing, like you mentioned. Impact of hiring coding agents, I thought was an interesting one. He asked him like, well, are you making changes at Google? You're building these agents. They're more efficient. Have you changed your own hiring plans and budgeting as a result of it? And Sundar kind of sidestepped it. He's definitely taking into account how to be more productive and efficient. It was like, okay, I don't know what that means, but um, they talked a lot about regulations. And then he asked him about the economics for creators whose content feed these models. And he said they're going to be thoughtful, was his quote. And then Bezos, you highlighted, I thought it was just sort of interesting that he's back, like
I
spending that
know.
much time,
Yeah.
kind of like, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, the founders of Google, being back at Google working on AI. So just the fact that this is so significant that these people have moved on from these companies they founded 20 plus years ago are now back almost full time working on AI.
Mm.
And so it was really cool to hear. And Jeff's like, you can zip. Oh, his was over an hour because it was like at the 56-minute mark or something when they started to 51-minute where they
Yeah.
started talking about AI. So there was like all this other stuff within there. So yeah, I thought that he had this one part where he said, these kind of horizontal layers like electricity and compute and now artificial intelligence, they go everywhere. There isn't, I guarantee you, there isn't a single application that you can think of where this won't make it better. And I thought that was interesting because you can start to think about that in your own business. Like every piece of software you use is going to have AI in it. Every department in your company is going to have AI in it. Every business in your industry is going to have AI in it. And there's just going to be smarter versions of everything. That was where the name Smarter X came from when I named like our AI research firm a couple years ago and developed that initially as a consulting practice. It was like Smarter X, like whatever it is, just fill in the blank, like marketing, sales, service, industries. Everything is just going to get smarter with the underlying intelligence layer. Um, and then there was the last thing I'll say when he asked Bezos about like, what will it mean to be human? He had an interesting take. He said, you can always find somebody better than you at something now. And yet that doesn't take the meaning away. So he was saying like, he's not the best in the world at anything. There is someone smarter than him at every single thing he does or cares about or is passionate about.
Yeah.
And yet as a human, there's no meaning lost in that. So his point was, if all of a sudden there's these AI models that are just smarter than you at everything, does it really change your life? Like,
Mm.
I mean, yeah, it's on demand now. Like you can go get it from ChatGPT instead of having to go find these people. But his whole point was like, we don't derive our meaning from being the smartest in the world at a thing. And like your meaning comes from relationships and people. And I was like, that's a really fascinating perspective. And I need to think more about it because I was just watching this like, hour before we jumped on this podcast. But I thought that was an interesting take that like, there's always people better than you or smarter than you at all these things. And like, that doesn't change your perspective on the meaning of life.
Right.
I don't know. There might be something to unpack there. I have to think about it more.
Now, it was interesting that all three of them did end up getting almost philosophical at some point.
Yeah, they hit on copyright, fair use for everybody. They hit on competition. They hit on, the future of AI models, and they hit on like the meaning of life. Like that's what I'm saying. Like
Yeah.
to get those three guys on the stage in a single day talking about these things was fascinating.